Most cryptos will never exceed their previous all-time high. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you all of the different reasons why some projects will never exceed their previous all-time high. And by the way, I'm going to be giving you all of these points just learning from experience. Okay, I've been in the markets now a little while. I've seen a lot of projects come and go, and I'm going to be giving you the main reasons why most projects will never exceed their previous all-time high. By the way, my name is Trevor, and I previously worked at Binance, and now I make videos for all of you degenerates. So today in this video, I'm going to be going over all of the different points why the price of most tokens will never exceed the previous all-time high. Of course, all of this is not financial advice, but before you even think about getting into a project, you need to take into account some of the things that I'm about to mention. The first is supply and inflation. All right, this is the number one killer for most projects. Let's take a look at a few projects. First of all, we have Say here. Do you guys remember this project? Well, it previously had a all-time high at 92 cents and currently has a market cap of $1 billion right now. And let's just take a look at the market cap chart. Now, if you take a look at the price chart and then you compare that to the market cap chart, this paints a different picture. In fact, the market cap all-time high was on November 26th of 2024 with an all-time high of $2.7 billion. And then if we compare that to this part here for example, in February 20th of 2024, this was at $2.3 billion for the all-time high. But then if you look at the price point, you'll see back here that the all-time high price point was at 89 cents, whereas the all-time high market cap back here was only at 65 cents. Now you might be wondering, why is that? That is because of the supply and inflation. So for example, this project says that the total supply is 10 billion. Right now, 6 billion of those tokens are circulating. Usually projects start out with low floats, aka low percentages of the supply. So therefore they can, bounce a lot harder and the price can go up a lot faster. And then what happens is slowly over time, there's more and more tokens that inflate the supply. So therefore the market cap has to continuously be higher and higher. And even here, when it exceeded the previous all-time high, for example, this was 2.7 billion versus the 2.3 billion, the price point of the token still didn't compare, because back here it was at 92 cents and then back here it was 65 cents, even though this was the all-time high, the true all-time high in the market cap. This is how important it is to take a look at the supply and inflation metrics when it comes to the tokenomics of a project. Let's take a look at another project, Solana. If we take a look at the market cap view, we can see we hit a all-time high at $134 billion back on September 19th. If we take a look at the price point, it was only at $247 versus some other price points, for example, $250 back here, or what do we have here? What do you know? $247, whereas the market cap was much lower there. The all-time high was here, but the price of the token was not exceeding its previous all-time high. This is because there are a lot more Solana out in circulation now. Now, when it comes to all the projects I'm talking about, I actually think Solana can hit and exceed its previous all-time high. I do. This was like the one project that kind of stood out as an ETH killer, but I think Solana will do well in the future, and I do think that it's going to exceed its previous all-time high. But still, it's interesting to see that the market cap has gone up a lot, but the price of the project hasn't really in comparison. Now, if we compare that to, for example, ETH, we can see that ETH, comparing the price and the market cap, you can see that it's actually quite fair. Let's take a look at another, AVAX, all right? Market cap. If we take a look at the market cap here, we can see that, previously it almost hit its all-time highs. It kind of went close, but still the price of these points here, for example, back here when it was at, 21 billion or versus 21 billion here, it does not even compare to the 20 billion that was back here, right? The 20 billion back here was around like $70, $80. Here, it was around $57, $60. Here it was like $50. That's because there are more tokens coming out into supply, inflating the supply, just like the US dollar. Let's go to another, Near Protocol. Price, market cap. We can see the market cap tried to hit all-time highs here at, going to $9 billion, which was close to kind of where it previously was. Right here at this wick, we can see this was $8.5 billion, but it's not even close in the price point, $13 compared to around $7. Again, more tokens entering supply means that there has to be more and more buyers to buy it up. So one of the most legendary projects that you should take a look at, I really encourage you to look at this chart on your own, is called Flow. So the market cap is at $430 million. And if we go back to, for example, like this point here, it hit $2.4 billion back in March, right? But if you take a look at the price point is so low in comparison to where it previously was. Even though the market cap wasn't that far off to where it previously was in the past, we can see here that the price has just absolutely tanked because of the amount of tokens that have entered supply. So that's one of the points. And then the second point is just brutal competition, right? There are so many Says, there are so many Aptoses, there are so many Ethereum killers. There's the next AVAX, and there is the next Near Protocol, Flow, Algorand, the next fastest L1, for example. Most of these just end up getting eaten up by newer projects that come out. For example, the next project that we have on the list is Monad. Monad is the next all-time high fastest blockchain project to come out. And will it do well? Probably when it first comes out. Probably. It still is a high float, so it's not like a low float, so it's not going to pump a lot, but it's probably going to pump up a decent amount. But over time, is it going to be used? Are devs going to be using it? Is there going to be revenue that's going to be acquired by the chain consistently? That's pretty high. I doubt it. And I say that I doubt it, just comparing it to all of the other previous L1s that have come about that have tried to, be the next ETH and the next L1 that a lot of devs and also community members use, but then no one ends up using it. Now, the next point is one that I've been seeing a lot more of recently. I'm not sure if I fully subscribe to it, but that is that a lot of people say that liquidity has been spread too thin because nowadays there are millions of coins that have come about, whereas before there was only like 20 to 40 active coins that people were trading. And retail doesn't like to buy the old boomer coins, as I've heard them said as before. They like to buy whatever the hottest thing is. And right now, the next hottest L1 is going to be Monad. And then the next point is VCs exiting over time. So most of the time, VCs have some of their supply, which is liquid upon launch, upon the TGE, and then they have a lot of it that is vested. So what they'll do is they'll essentially just try to stake their vested supply, basically sell out any of the tokens that are redeemed through staking. Or if they can't do that, then they'll simply just sell out their supply over time anyways, because they bought in way earlier than any other retail member, and they can basically just slowly exit for years. And it's like the same blueprint every time. They know all the names, they know all the marketing, they know all the exchanges to get listed, they know and have all the connections, and they basically use that and of course their funds as leverage to the project to then be invested super early in them. And then of course, the next point is a horrible token design. Tokens that can just keep coming out into supply, no utility, unlimited inflation, and are essentially mathematically incapable of hitting their previous all-time high again. So by now you might be asking, all right, Trevor, so this is essentially what makes up a garbage project. What can I do about it? Well, of course, not financial advice, but typically these projects do bounce on the open. They do pretty well. But then, like I said, slowly over time, when more token unlocks come out and the project just gets more and more boring because the crypto market has essentially the mind of a goldfish. They quickly forget about stuff. Over time, they essentially will forget about the project. So first of all, I try to look for projects that are in a narrative that is not going to expire anytime soon, within a few cycles. So I think some of the best narratives right now obviously are AI, DPIN, RWA is pretty good as well. There's also a few memes that I think are actually going to last within a few cycles. And then the next point, only a max supply, so not an unlimited infinity supply of tokens. And of that, a clear schedule of when they're coming out into supply, because not all projects that do have inflation are, for example, bearish. I mean, there's a couple that I like. The one that I really like is called Hydrex, and there's a lot of inflation on that project, but I still think overall it's bullish. But I do tend to avoid projects overall with inflation. I usually like projects with a max supply of a specified amount, with all of them circulating upon launch. Those are typically my favorites. I also like to check the VC selling pressure. So I like to see if their supply is going to be vested, if they basically get it all on the TGE. If they get it all on the TGE, that could be a bit dangerous because they can all basically dump and suppress the price. If it's vested over a longer period period of time. Usually that's a lot better. And also I like to have only a small amount of VCs or private sales. So for example, not hundreds of millions. For example, I think Modad has like over 100 something million dollars in private sales for VCs. And because typically narratives don't last for, 3 to 4 cycles, I try to at least look for something that is going to maintain retail attention for a few cycles if I can. Now that one's a little bit harder, and I'll probably make a separate video about this in the future. And then if there's just poor token design, there's no flywheel effect, and people at the end of the day realize that there's no point for the token, that's not going to be good. Or if there's also some type of permanent trust damage, like for example, the project had a few bad moves in a row, that could leave a very bad taste in the mouths of most investors, and they probably won't even touch the project. And also if the project has a very good background when it comes to marketing, so they've marketed in the proper areas at the right time, usually those are projects that are worth sticking with. So those are just a couple of points. I honestly feel like I could talk about this for a few hours, but I'm going to keep it short. If any of this resonated with you, make sure to check out the school group in the description below. Or if you also want to work with me one-on-one, make sure to check out the top link in the description below. Anyways, guys, I'll see you in the next one.